In this session, let's get into the Azure portal and create a virtual network. To get started with creating a virtual network in Azure, simply type virtual networks into the Azure portal search bar and select the service from the results list. Simply click on the blue Create Virtual Network button located in the center of the screen or from the top menu by clicking Create. This will launch the virtual network creation wizard where you can start defining the basic settings like name, region, address space, and subnets for your VNet. At this stage, I am on the Basics tab of the Create Virtual Network wizard. I start by selecting the subscription where I want to deploy my virtual network. Then I choose the appropriate resource group, either by selecting an existing one like RG-region, 1-networks, or creating a new one. I enter a clear, meaningful name for the virtual network, such as VNet-region 1-hub1, to keep things consistent with my overall design. Finally, I select the region where I want this network to be deployed. For example, Australia East. Let me click Next. As I land on the Security tab during the virtual network creation process, I see options for advanced features like virtual network encryption, Azure Bastion, Azure Firewall, and DDoS network protection. These are powerful capabilities, but it's a bit too early to get into them right now. Since my focus is just on setting up the basic virtual network structure, I'm going to leave everything unchecked at this stage. We'll explore these features in more depth later, once we've built out our network and are ready to integrate security services more intentionally. Let me click Next. Now that I'm on the IP addresses tab, I'm aligning this step with the exact planning we did earlier for the hub network. You can see I've defined the overall address space for this virtual network as a /22 block, which matches what I allocated in my Excel sheet under VNet-region 1-hub1. Within this address space, I'm now breaking it down into smaller subnets. I've just started by editing one subnet to serve a specific purpose, Azure Bastion. If you look at the right-hand panel, I've selected Azure Bastion as the subnet purpose, and I've named it Azure Bastion Subnet, following the required naming convention. The subnet size I've chosen here is /24, giving me enough IPs to support Bastion scale-out if needed in the future. This approach follows exactly what we planned for the hub layout, where we reserve one subnet for Bastion, one for the gateway, and left others unused for future flexibility. What I'm doing here is just bringing that plan to life, step by step, in the Azure portal. Once I finish configuring this subnet, I'll click Save and then continue adding the next subnets for the VPN gateway and the rest of the infrastructure services we mapped out earlier. Let me add gateway subnet as we planned in the earlier session. At this point, I've added the required subnets according to the plan we defined earlier for the hub network. One for Azure Bastion and another for the VPN gateway. Both subnets are properly named and sized within the allocated address space. Since everything aligns with our design, I don't need to add anything further here. I'm now ready to move forward, so I simply click on Review plus Create to validate the configuration and deploy the virtual network. You will see a confirmation screen like this one. It summarizes everything you've configured: subscription, resource group, address space, subnets, and security options. I see everything looks correct. Let's go ahead and click the Create button to deploy virtual network. Now that the virtual network is deployed, I've opened it and gone straight to the Subnets tab. This is where I can verify how each subnet is functioning, specifically by looking at the available IPs column. Take the Azure Bastion subnet as an example. I created this with a /24 address space, which gives a total of 256 IP addresses. Out of these, Azure reserves 5 IP addresses automatically for things like gateway, broadcast, and internal Azure functions. That means I'm left with 251 usable IP for deploying my resources, which is exactly what you see reflected under available IPs. The same applies to gateway subnet, where the address range is also a /24. Azure's dynamic infrastructure might show a slightly variable availability here, especially if you are using gateway services. But the starting point is always 251 usable IPs out of 256. This is a good way to double check that your subnet planning is accurate and that you're getting the IP capacity you expect. It also helps you proactively spot if any subnets are running low before deployment even begins.